Hey everybody, David Chatham here with Angel Oak Creative. Excited to welcome everyone to the second season of our podcast. We got through our inaugural season. I didn't mess too much up, so we are actually doing it again. So this is the Angel Oak Creative Nonprofit State of Minds podcast, where we pick the brains of nonprofit leaders and just try to learn something each day, try to take something away that's going to help our nonprofit leaders make a greater impact. And this year, we're really talking about like the power of good and what nonprofits bring to that power, what power they have to influence and to change the world. So we're excited about that. We have another great guest on for today. Noah Barnett is VP of Marketing for Feather, a digital marketing agency that serves or focuses on nonprofits. So welcome, Noah.
Thanks, David. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. I came into contact with Feather probably within the last year or so through some clients that are using your platform, and I've had some conversations with you all, with some of your other colleagues, and have learned a lot and looking for ways to partner. But just this the work that you do, and I'll let you describe what the work that you do is just I think is helping nonprofits to make a bigger impact, to increase the reach that they have. So tell us a little bit about what Feather does, how you do it, and maybe how you got to Feather and what your journey of working in the nonprofit sector is like.
Absolutely. Yeah, I will tell you what Feather is first and then kind of go backwards in time and share
Sure.
why I'm here and why I think the work we get to do aligns with what I want to do for the industry. So Feather is a nonprofit marketing platform or software, and we enable you to deeply understand your community, which is a core part of good marketing, then personally connect with your people wherever they are, new people, your current people, whether they're in their inbox, scrolling social, or wandering the web. How do you really connect with people wherever they are? And that's becoming more difficult, and we help you streamline that. And then ultimately work smarter in one unified platform. And so that's really our focus here at Feather, is helping you do good marketing at scale. And our point of view is that, as you mentioned, the power of good. But I think one thing we've come to believe here at Feather is that marketing is good with a capital G. It's part of the mission, it's mission
Yeah.
critical, whether you're trying to communicate to your community to raise mission critical support, you're trying to raise mission critical awareness around your cause, or even trying to engage beneficiaries in the services you provide. All of that requires marketing. And so marketing isn't this means to the mission, it really is part of the good you create.
And so tell us how you got to this place, working with Feather and the not and engaged in the nonprofit sector.
Yeah, what drew me to Feather is this idea that marketing is good with a capital G. When I was really young at 15 or 16, I remember acutely this experience of seeing a bunch of people wait outside of a Best Buy. And it was freezing in the morning, and they're all waiting outside before it opened. And I've actually now waited in some of those lines now that I'm adult for various things. But I was just confused about what this thing was that would create people to do unrealistic things or unrational things. Like, what was this magic? And I think as I went through my schooling and then went into school for marketing, you realize it's not actually magic. It's just good marketing. And with that deep understanding of marketing, I really wanted to apply that to mission. If we can make people do unreasonable things like wait in line in the cold to buy
Tickle
things,
me Elmo.
games or Tickle Me Elmos or new books or whatever, those are all good things, but they're not as good as the things that nonprofits listening to this are doing, like feeding children, saving the environment, serving our communities, standing in for when people can't stand for themselves or don't
Yeah.
have the option or voice to do that. So could we really live at this intersection of like marketing and mission? And what would
Yeah.
that look like? And so I started my career working in nonprofits. I worked at an international relief humanitarian nonprofit, really doing child development work, and learn the ins and outs of how you could use good marketing to scale your mission.
Yeah.
And then now have since been applying that both in consulting roles, but also in partnership with technology companies that serve nonprofits, because I realized in practice that to really do mission and marketing well, you have to incorporate technology.
Yeah.
So for the last 10 or 15 years, I've been living at the intersection of marketing, mission, and technology. And this alignment with what Feather believes, where marketing is good, really stood out to me because I think, if anything, my cause that I'm an advocate for is marketing for nonprofits.
Yeah.
And that we should rewrite the narrative that marketing isn't a means to an end. It actually is mission critical. Marketers aren't just support people that take are order takers, they're actually strategic leaders. And marketing strategy isn't unpredictable. It actually can be a predictable driver of impact growth in your organization. And so that's my personal cause. And today I get to do that in partnership as the VP of marketing at Feather.
Well, you're speaking our love language here at Angel Oak, so we wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said. So we support that mission and are grateful to play a small role in that as well. So I love that heart to really to impact nonprofits so they can impact the world, right? And
Absolutely.
that's awesome. So as a platform, can you give us a little just so people can understand a little bit better, can you give us a practical application of how Feather might be used at a nonprofit, maybe a case study or kind of a quick example of what that could look like?
Yeah, happy to. So, two quick use cases that most nonprofits that use our platform are going after and probably resonate with the listeners is to acquire new donors. And so, when you're thinking about how do I acquire new donors, you really first need to look at, well, who are our
Like the
current
holy
best donors?
grail of nonprofit marketing, right? I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
is you want to grow your community. And so, but to do that, you have to understand who are your current best donors. And so we help you as a platform segment and build audiences of your current best donors,
Mm.
and then be able to use that to inform how you go out and find your next best donors through digital advertising, through social advertising, and even further engaging your website traffic. Most people that come to your nonprofit's website leave and never do anything. It's like they walked into your store and they left. And
Right,
typically, nonprofits focus on just optimizing the people that they convert. It's like, oh, they went to the donation page and they gave us a donation. Now what?
right.
What about the 97% of people that didn't do anything? How do you engage them?
Yeah.
And so Feather can help you activate that unknown audience that visits your website by helping reach them through digital advertising, but also using affinity targeting and other digital advertising techniques. You can actually reach new donors. So that's the first use case: is how do I acquire new donors? And we have over 1,500 nonprofits using our platform to
Wow.
do that. The other side, which is deeply important as well, is that you want to cultivate deeper connections with your current supporters. So through things like email marketing, through digital advertising, promoting events or campaigns that you're doing, how do you stay connected with your current audience through the multitude of digital channels that we now interact with brands on? And so we help you run and report on those types of activities, everything from your day-to-day email marketing to running digital advertising and social advertising, to be able to do automation and multi-channel. And so how do I actually connect with someone like you, David, both through email, but then when you go scroll social later, you're being reinforced with the same message. We help organizations do what I call good marketing at scale.
That's great. Uh, one of the things that we've learned in the 12 years that Angel Oak's been around of serving nonprofits is that, there's a desire to do the work, but often there's either a hesitancy or maybe even a legitimate lack of funds to be able to do some of this work, right? And like Angel Oak, you're a for-profit, so you do charge for your services. What are some of the challenges that you've heard some of your clients talk about in terms of either securing the funding for being able to invest in the work that they do with you, or maybe some of the challenges of not getting approval or permission to want to invest in something like this, even if money's not the issue. It's just the idea of another technology or another platform, right?
Yeah, I think those challenges are very familiar to me because I was a marketer at a nonprofit,
Yeah.
and you're always trying to advocate as a marketer, not even just at nonprofits, but at any company, as to why your work matters or why it deserves the funding that you should have. And the challenge most nonprofits run into is that they're typically not doing good marketing. They're doing what I call unreliable magic, which means that they're doing a bunch of random things, meaning they're saying, hey, we're going to do the event, we're going to do the email, we're going to do the Facebook, we're going to do the social ads, this, that, and the other. So there's disconnectivity
Right.
to the activities they're doing. and it's not centered on who are we trying to reach, what are we trying to say to them, and how are we trying to connect with them. And that fragmented approach to marketing makes things like reporting very, very difficult because you don't fully know exactly what's impacting what,
Right.
which then encourages organizations to typically do a channel first reporting
Mm,
strategy, meaning they say, hey, we did direct mail and we got this much money. The ROI on that was blank, positive or
right.
negative. And then it's like, well, now we're doing Facebook advertising and we spent X amount of money and we got Y amount of impact. Was that good or bad? The challenge is that you're not looking at it holistically, as we started talking about before the call, and that what is the impact of advertising on my email strategy? And do I
Right.
know that? And so, one thing that we like to talk about here at Feather and we try to help with and support both through our content and education, but also through our platform is reorienting how you think about reporting to a community first strategy versus a channel first strategy. Because if we know that we want to move this part of our community, let's say they're mid-level donors, to become more deeply engaged with our audience, we then can come up with a tactical list of things that we want to do to connect with that audience and activate them to action. To be able to do that, I need to invest in things like email marketing, in digital advertising, et cetera. And I'm proving the investment value there because of the expected impact that we're going to generate 20% more impact or more revenue from our mid-level donor program, or we're going to acquire 20% more donors. And if you start with the actual business impact, then work back to the tactics,
Right.
that's a way that you can kind of overcome some of these ROI challenges that typically surface because we're still measuring marketing through the lens of a direct fundraising or direct response view, because we've basically just taken our direct response methodology and applied it to marketing
Right.
and not looking at it more holistically. And so if we continue to measure everything on a direct response basis, that's where organizations get into this hamster wheel where it's like, well, direct mail is getting more expensive and not working as much. We're going to go try digital channels. Well, digital channels aren't working as well because we're measuring it from the same direct response direct mail strategy. Well, that's not working. Okay, well, now we're going to go do events or we're going to do email marketing. And we focus more on the ings versus the
Yeah.
market.
Yeah.
And so we actually do ing market. We do activities to the market
Right.
versus like understanding the market and then doing activities. So I know that that was a big, broad thing, but I think this is why
No.
we actually spend so much time as it relates to this question, um, educating and enabling nonprofits to know what good marketing or good nonprofit marketing looks like,
Yeah.
because it rewrites how you should think about investments in your marketing and how you should measure success,
Yeah.
because it's community first, not channel first. And so that's why I always push back on this ROI question, because it's like it typically is a channel first question, not a, well, if we're moving the impact of the donor lifetime value of this segment of our audience to, you know, 20% more than it was in the last 24 months, is that worth investing in connecting with them? Well, then we're going to deploy resources accordingly versus should we do
Right.
Facebook ads or should we invest in direct mail?
So what I hear you saying partly is that there's a little bit of a paradigm or a mindset shift, right? That people have to undertake, which I'm guessing has required some marketing of your own
Yeah.
to communicate to people.
More
You know,
education,
one of
which I
the
think good marketing is just educating and
right,
enabling your audience to, in our case, buy our software, right?
right,
That's what we're trying to do, or buy your services at Angel Oak. But in the case, like if I'm a nonprofit marketer, my job is to connect with a community of people that align with my cause, build care for the cause, confidence in my organization to actually do something on that cause, and then connect with community or like-minded people also caring about that cause.
right,
That's it. And that's really enablement and education. And maybe that exposes some of my mindset of what good marketing is, but it
right.
should look like enabling a or activating your audience to take the actions that they want to do. And that happens to be giving to your organization or volunteering or becoming a member.
Sure. I'm guessing so one that whenever we go to speak, we're talking to nonprofits and Usually I'll ask a question, and again, not out of shame, but just out of curiosity. How many of you have a marketing plan in your organization, right? And, there's 100 people in the room, and we'll maybe get 25 of them to raise their hand, right? So 75% of those folks didn't have a marketing plan, and that's not uncommon. I mean, does that hold true for some of your organizations that come in, that they haven't gotten to the place where they've been able to, or taken the time to, or have the skill to create a marketing plan that talks to what you're talking about, which is to be strategic and kind of holistic and integrated, right, to that approach? I don't know.
Yeah.
What's your experience or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the question of do you have a marketing plan needs translation a lot of times when I'm in talking to peers or other nonprofit marketing
Yeah.
leaders. Because if you ask the question of do you have a plan to acquire new donors,
Yeah.
the hands might increase.
Yeah.
And so, or do you have a plan to retain more donors? And
Right.
so again, anchoring to like a key KPI metric. Now,
Right.
again, to you and I, we might say, well, that's just a marketing plan. And I think a good marketing plan actually has maybe 3 or 4 different components in it. One of like, how do we acquire more supporters? How do we
Right.
retain our supporters? How do we actually get deeper loyalty and investment from our current supporters? So maybe there's these 3 objectives.
Right.
The nonprofits we usually engage have a priority across one of those 3 vectors. We want to acquire more, we want to retain more, we want to grow, we want to get more from our current supporters.
Right.
And if we look at a marketing plan, not as this big scary thing, but as a set of activities and intentions we're going to take to accomplish one of those maybe 3 objectives. And for your organization, it might be volunteership, it might be ticket sales, or patrons to your nonprofit. There's a lot of different nonprofits out there with objectives.
Sure.
The marketing plan really is just the set of activities and intentions, the content and the channels and campaigns we're going to use to connect with that specific audience to then activate them to the action that we would like to encourage them to take.
Right.
And so I agree with the sentiment that typically it's a low number of hands for marketing plan, but really the marketing plan within nonprofits is usually disguised as the development plan or the fundraising
Right.
plan or the membership plan.
Right.
And we need to still apply good marketing best practices within that plan. But it's okay if you don't have a marketing plan. I think
Right.
it's
You don't
just
have to call
knowing
it
that
that, right?
marketing is mission critical to accomplishing donor acquisition, donor retention, donor cultivation.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I appreciate that
Yeah.
insight.
And I just taught about this too at the end of last year in preparing to like, what does a good marketing plan look like? And so I'll share a resource afterwards, but
Oh, that'd be
if you
great.
can include in the show links, I kind of walk through my framework of what a nonprofit marketing plan should look like. And it's kind of anchored to the same methodology where it should be anchored to key objectives that impact the growth of the business.
Yeah.
And then you define like, okay, now we have a Facebook marketing plan, but you don't orient around the channels, you orient around the objectives.
Right. And I've been pushing that, or at least encouraging that, that a marketing plan or a communications plan or a development plan or any of those things don't have to be complex, right? I mean, I can probably do a 1 to 2 page marketing plan, right? That's got those objectives, the audiences, the strategies, the tactics, and the responsible party, right? And do that in a couple of pages. So I think people get intimidated by the idea that a plan of any kind is going to be complex and ends up in a drawer somewhere, right? So
Yep.
I think to your point, thinking about it differently and looking at it in a way that is much more simple and simplified, I think is a good approach to helping people not be so intimidated or even frustrated by what
Yeah.
that's like. So,
That's
you
why I
know,
always like the word
go ahead.
frameworks instead of
I
plans,
love framework. Welcome.
because I
Yes.
think the framework is intended to give you focus, but also flexibility. A plan feels like something that has a lot of weight to it, that like there's going to be this moment in time where we have this plan. But you said most plans sit on the shelf or sit in a Google Drive and collect dust.
Right.
A framework is something that you're operating off of, or it's like an operating system, an OS. We talk about iOS. It's like, this is my organizational's operating model. And so
Yeah.
we encourage people to use frameworks when they do plans.
I love it. Yeah.
And so we actually developed something last year called the Good Marketing Framework. And again, I'll
Oh,
share a link with you, David, if you want to share
yeah,
that with
that'd be
your
great.
audience, that'd be great. But it really, again, walks you through this approach to solving key business initiatives. Like, we want to acquire new donors. Okay, what are the next set of questions we need to ask that then can inform what activities we do to accomplish
Right.
that specific thing? Like, who are we trying to reach if we're trying to acquire new donors? It's like, no, 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 we're just trying to acquire new donors. Like, okay, but the next question we have to ask is anybody in the global population like we're trying to reach? Because that's a dead end road. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you have a specific thing of like, we're trying to engage this group or people that have a propensity for cats or environment or global affairs, whatever it is. Like, there's
Right.
still a set of questions you need to ask before you even get into, okay, well, now here's the email marketing strategy.
Yeah.
But again, it's very
Well,
simple when you frame it through a framework. So I
and
encourage
there are
frameworks
very
over
few
plans.
there are very few products or causes that are literally for everybody, right? I mean, that's when we ask that question and we'll, either, who are you for or who's going to care about this or, anything kind of framed around those kind of questions. And the answer comes back, well, everybody. I'm like, well, if you're talking to everybody, you're really not talking to anybody, right? Because it's just you're watering down your message so much or making it so irrelevant to everybody that, to the ones that who really care, that they may miss the opportunity, right? Because they don't understand
Absolutely.
for them. So, well, you talk a lot about that, harnessing the power of community. And, as I mentioned this year, we're really focused on this idea of the power of good that nonprofits have on our communities. Talk about that of what is it? What do you mean by community? What is that power of community that you all um, value so much?
Yeah, I think as a nonprofit, our role, especially as we're trying to, or at most organizations that rely on a larger group of individuals to come together to lead to the impact, whether that's raising money, volunteering, advocacy work, et cetera, is really the organization is a platform for people to come together to work on the cause that your organization is for or the cause that your organization is against. And sometimes it's you're for something and against something. This goes back to what you just said. Like, if you're trying to be for everyone and against nothing, you're like a white envelope. Like, I have no
Right,
idea what it is. And I think your retention rates are going to be pretty tough, even if you get my first donation.
right.
But the organizations that are thriving anchor to this idea that we're for or against something or against something. And our role is to connect a group of people to the cause that we're working on and building that community together. And when we look at our jobs as nonprofits to be a platform for people to collaborate on the cause that we've chosen to work on, it changes your mindset of what you're doing. You're not out there just begging for money or convincing
Right.
people or trying to target people to give you money or even like competing with John, the fundraiser down the street. Like, you may be competitive because you're after the same thing, but what they are selling and what you are trying to activate is different. And that anchors back to believing that your supporter base is a community, because I would steward a community differently, even from a wording standpoint,
Yeah.
than a group of donors. These are my donors. I'm like, oh, these are people that give me money so we can do the work that we're doing. Whereas like a community, there's like accountability, there's responsibility. Like, there's natural identity attached to that, both for you as an organization and the people that you're connecting with. You're inviting someone into a community that cares about this specific cause. And I think even the words we use and why I love the word community
Yeah.
has power because it shapes our intention. And that's why I'm so personally passionate about community. And even to the point at Feather, like, we believe so much that nonprofits are really cultivating a community that in our product, when you go in and you look at all your people, it says community and then it says people. It's not
Right.
like contacts, constituents. Like, there's nothing wrong with those words, but they're
Stakeholders.
like, or even like leads or whatever, whatever these platforms, like we want to intentionally align the message of our platform with the focus that you should be is that you have a community of people. And some of those people, they give to you, they support you, they come to all
Right.
your events, etc. Other people you're just getting to know. They've donated to you once, they're on your email list. There's other people in your community that you don't know. They're visiting your website. They're following you on social media. They
Right.
care about the cause you care about. They just haven't connected with you yet.
Right.
And again, looking at it as our job is to steward relationships with the people that are loyal to us, the people that are getting to know us, and the people that care about what we care about, but we just don't know each other yet.
Right.
That's it. And so orienting around that community first strategy is something that I'm deeply passionate about. And again, I think why my alignment with even what we do here at Feather is that we're trying to help nonprofits better steward those connections with their community.
That's great. Yeah, I think it would be a game changer if we had more people thinking that way versus, the idea of just donors, right? Or just volunteers or just whatever that is, however we've labeled them, right? That it's more about a community of people coming together to create some kind of action or movement or something, right? That we're all
Absolutely.
working together. It's that whole trite but true, better together, kind of message. And, some of our nonprofits have embraced that. And, they talk about their recipients and their donors as being friends, right? That we're in this together, that we're walking this journey together as friends, as partners, as supporters together, supporting each other, right? And that may be financially, for some, that may be faith organizations, that may be through prayer, or that may be through, just showing up when needed, right? So, yeah, there's a lot of ways that community can serve, and certainly financially is a very important one. But yeah, it also creates other opportunities to create other relationships. That
Yeah. Seth Godin has this great quote that's probably been used often, but it's like people want to know, like, people like me do things like this
right,
because we're naturally social, we're naturally reflective, what we do, what we invest. And I think generosity or philanthropy is deeply personal. And so even more so, it's like people like me do things like this, and the giving to your organization or the attending an event or the advocacy petition that you sign might just be evidence of something I believe or want to believe about myself. And I want to do that in community. And so leaning into that as kind of a core of the strategic decisions you make as an organization, I think just makes sense. I just don't think it's debatable. It's like you have to see
right.
it this way, or you just then believe that your relationship with your supporters is transactional, and then you shouldn't complain when your retention rates are 25%.
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just because you're playing the Amazon game, which is like the race to the bottom, efficiency, et cetera. And
quantity over quality, right? I mean, it's the
yeah,
yeah,
and I think in today, especially heading, we're heading into a new year. It's a year filled with distractions, like every year is. I don't think this year is
yeah,
unique, but it has different types of distractions, whether it's an election or a global conflict or an economic uncertainty or whatever it is. These happen every single year, natural
right,
disasters, et cetera. You need to be clear why someone should invest their effort, which or their attention, which is the number one currency in today's connected environment, which is like what we give attention to. It's actually the thing that we don't have more of, and I can't create more of
right,
unless I try to be more efficient. When it comes to giving to charity, like I'm actually asking for someone's attention, and I need to have a good reason to do that. And then when I capture that, how do I steward that well? And how do I serve them and make that attention, the ROI on their attention, worth it? Not
right,
just our ROI on ad spend.
right. No, that's all good points. Is there a type of nonprofit or a size of nonprofits that it make sense to consider Feather? Is it for everybody?
It is not, and we're actually very clear about that.
Yeah, well, tell
Um,
us more about that.
I don't think the email goes out anymore, but when for a while when an organization applied, typically it was a smaller organization, like under $1 million in revenue, where I would send a personal automated email, but I wrote the email myself that said, hey, like part of doing good marketing is knowing who you're for, and in that, knowing who you're not for. And we've seen that organizations over $1 million and typically even $3 million and up, really those that have a large enough community and somewhat of an intention to grow in complexity because they're doing a lot of different things. They're selling tickets, they're doing events, they're raising money online, they're doing email marketing, digital advertising. They need a platform like Feather to help them better run and report on all of those activities. And so we really are positioned for organizations that are, one, investing in connecting with a community, two, desire to use digital channels like email and social and digital advertising, and even offline channels too. You can track in Feather. And then typically of a certain size, usually a mid to large nonprofit, is where Feather becomes a invaluable sidekick to helping you do good marketing at scale.
And how do you define mid to large for you all?
Yeah, so typically, again, it's at least over $1 million in revenue as kind of our arbitrary line in the sand, but usually that's a reflection of a certain kind of evolution of an organization and thus
Right.
complexity of their marketing. And again, usually an organization that's engaging a large amount of individuals. And so if you are an organization that only has 10 donors, like Feather's not a really great tool for you because you could use Gmail and the phone and you're all
Right.
set. You don't need technology like Feather. So usually over $1 million in revenue, usually an organization that has somewhere around 5,000 or more people that they're trying to connect with.
Okay. Great. Yeah. And
And usually a mind towards growth.
right.
And I think that's the other thing too, is that technology is only useful to help you enable strategy. And so if the strategy is to just do what we've always done and keep doing that because that's what we need to do, a platform
Right.
like Feather usually isn't a great partner. But an
Sure.
organization that says, hey, we want to grow our community, we want to cultivate our community, we want to activate our community, and we want to do that better and better every year. Those are the organizations we usually partner with.
So as we wrap up, most of our listeners from knowing our audience a little bit are nonprofit leaders, board members, those sorts of folks. What would you want them to take away from this kind of conversation? We'll make sure that we make that really clear as we close out our discussion here.
So a couple things. One is to generate money or time or any site of conversion for your organization that you care about. So raising more money, generating more impact, et cetera. It requires you first and foremost to connect with the people
Yeah.
that can help you do that. We can't activate people we're not connected with. And whether that's connected through email or digital or social or offline, you have to cultivate connection first before you can activate action.
Right.
So you have to be investing in marketing because marketing is the key function of the way we cultivate connection with our audiences through a variety of channels to get to our outcomes. So if we have core outcomes, we have to first think, okay, how are we going to cultivate connection with the groups of people that can actually help us get to that? More money, more, et cetera, more signatures, more awareness, more patrons, more ticket sales, et cetera. So that's the first thing, is that cultivating connection is powered by marketing. That's my first thing. The second thing would be we need to move from a channel first to a community first mindset and how we both report on ROI and how we design campaigns. Practically, what this means is that reporting just on an individual channel and measuring the ROI based on the outcomes driven by that channel independently is not going to get you the best results because we live in a world where people are connecting with your organization, your cause through a variety of channels. Like our attention's fractured across a
Right.
variety of channels. And so we need to be measuring ROI based on a omni-channel approach. So we are emailing these people, we're doing digital advertising to these people, we might be sending them direct mail, we might be making phone calls. Of all of these investments, what was the ROI or movement in impact in that community? And that's why I say community first reporting versus channel first reporting, because it
Right.
invites you to have a more longer term view, which I think we should all be focusing on. So those are the big two things. You have to cultivate connection if you want to activate action. That is marketing. That's why marketing is mission critical. And we need to move from a channel first reporting and campaign design process to a community first. People people you're getting to know, people you don't know that care about your cause. Even just that 3x3 orientation of like, what's our plan to do this? What's our plan to do
Right.
this? What's our plan to do this? Is going to get you better outcomes than optimizing channel first up.
Thank you. And yes, amen. Yeah. And I think everything I've heard from you today is really reinforcing the idea that it is, it takes focus, right? And it takes intentionality to do the things that nonprofits want to be able to do. And it also takes capacity. And what I hear Feather bringing to the table is that by creating a really clear, compelling strategy and platform that enables a focus on that community driven results or the results within community, that you're also adding capacity to the team, because you're not requiring as much of that kind of chasing the shiny object, right? It's like, oh, this looks good today. You're enabling them to have a focus and to say, when we move this lever, here is what happens, right? And
Exactly.
we can do that quickly, and we can do it well, and we can measure the results of it really clearly through a lens that tells us that we're building it in a way that is creates a more sustainable approach, right? And it
Yeah.
isn't I talk a lot about in the past about like hit and run marketing, right? Where you do one thing, you get a result, and then you move to the next thing versus, you mentioned in our pre-conversation about the lifetime value of a community member, right? And I think that's so important that it's not a transaction one time, that engaging people for life, if you think about lifetime value, right? I mean, I know of organizations that have had donors support them for decades, right? And you think about just what that means over the course of that life, of that experience, that relationship. I mean, it's incredible. And if you can duplicate that, right, replicate that over the course of the communities that you're talking about, the impact, the power of good is amplified and magnified, right? So,
Absolutely. Yeah. And
well,
I
how
think I
can,
love how you use the
oh, go
word
ahead.
capacity. Oh, I like how you use the word capacity because I think that is where technology comes into play, like a platform like Feather.
Yeah,
Feather or any other technology. And I've worked for multiple nonprofit technology companies the last couple years. Technology in of itself doesn't replace strategy.
right.
It builds capacity as you use to execute strategy and then report on strategy more effectively, or it should. It's not a replacement for strategy. And so
Right.
Feather is going to help you know what's working and then how to deploy that in a way that you can then learn from that. It's a learning platform too over
Yeah.
time so that you don't go back to zero every time. But it still doesn't replace good strategy. And I think that's what I've always believed. And often we seek out replacements for good strategy or good marketing.
Right.
And it has to start with a commitment to good marketing, then finding a partner like Angel Oaks or myself, or maybe even you coming along them to help them shape strategy,
Right.
then leverage technology. But technology is not a replacement for strategy.
Yeah. No, thank you. How
And
can
I sell
and just
technology every day.
yeah, I
I'm
know,
telling you,
right?
so
I
it doesn't
love it.
replace strategy.
I mean, we're looking at, we just did our leadership, our annual planning session here at Angel Oak yesterday, and things like AI and digital advertising and all of those things came up as, are we staying in front of it, or at least alongside of that technology, and are we using it to the best use of our clients and getting the best results, and how can we use that as an agency to deliver better and maybe more cost efficient approaches for our clients. So, yeah, I mean, we could talk for days about this stuff. So I appreciate that, Noah, and thank you so much for your time. How can people learn more about Feather and the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to do is connect on our website. It's feather without the last E .co. Feather without the last E .co. If you are on LinkedIn, you can connect with me, Noah Barnett. I'm that everywhere. If you see a little lightning bolt, that's me. And I would love to stay connected. So if you're listening to this and want to reach out on LinkedIn and say, hey, I heard you on the Angel Oaks podcast, I would love to stay in touch and answer questions.
Yeah. And full transparency, Angel Oak has been talking to Feather about becoming a partner of yours. So we are not there yet, but we're working on it. And I don't want people to think this is in any way a way to sell Feather for Angel Oak. But we're big fans and love that you have focused on this nonprofit sector like we have. We just, again, we believe in community and we want to build that community. And thank you all for believing that as well and for taking the time to speak today. For those who have not heard our podcast before, this is the second season. Our first season is available on Spotify and Apple and all those places. It's just the Nonprofit State of Minds podcast. You can go there. You can look on our website at angeloacreative.com. Noah, thank you so much. Thank you and Feather for advocating for community, for empowering our nonprofits to make a bigger impact, and for taking the time today to talk about it. So we're grateful for that. We wish you all.
Anytime, David. Thanks.
Sure thing. Thank you so much.